Hello and welcome back to this, my second tutorial time video. I'm McJohn Art and I'll be walking you through some more of my workflow today. Here we're working on an elven, archer, ranger, rogue type character, so that's what we'll be trying to draw more of today. Step 3 in my drawing process is shape layers. Now, working with shape layers, I tend to use these for items, weapons, and kind of other main points of interest that I want to focus on. Specifically anything with a rigid edge or anything that is artificially made. Here you can see I'm outlining the shape of the bow, or at least one of the halves of the bow. In order to make shape layers, I like to work with the pen tool. So it takes a while to get used to working with these vertices and creating these shapes, but after you do, it tends to work out well. But again, it takes a little time. Here you can see I made a mistake. I made it into a path. So I'm actually just going to select the path that I made and paste that onto a new shape layer. So hopefully if you start using the pen tool, it will automatically create a shape layer for you. Otherwise, there's an option in the top left when you have the pen tool selected that you can change. And that's the way that I normally create shape layers. So what is this shape layer good for? Well, you can actually see that I'm painting out some of it. So I'm painting out some of that white, and I'm using a mask in order to do that. This is kind of cool because we actually have two masks going on right now. We've got the shape layer, which is a vector mask, and the vexel mask going on. Second thing that's cool about these shape layers is you can create a clipping mask onto them, which is something I just did with a new layer there. And this is great for shading because everything stays confined within the shape. So the edge of the shape is always going to be the edge of the layer that I'm shading with. So it really does a great job of keeping clean and crisp edges as you're trying to shade in your dark or lights or whatever you're trying to do. It keeps everything very defined, and I think it looks very professional. I actually used to create shape layers for everything that I made in this digital art when I first started, and it worked out fairly well. But if you create shape layers for everything, then you end up with a lot of different layers, and that can be hard to manage. And on lower end computers like the ones I'm used to working on, it slows down your computer quite a bit. So just keep that in mind. Most of the time I end up doing 90 or 80% of my drawing on one layer, and then I'll create a few of these extra layers to kind of enhance the drawing. And one of the main reasons that I wanted to use a shape layer to create this bow is, if you notice, I actually only have created half of the bow, and I can actually duplicate this and set it down below, and it's, it keeps it symmetrical, looking nice. There you can see I made a shape layer for the arrow and shaded that in. So next up, in the following step, we are going to be working on something that's kind of unique. It's called solidifying. And I've actually had a few questions about this step in my drawing process, because right now you can see the drawing is looking fairly nice. I'm liking how it's turning out so far. However, if you were going to try to color this drawing in the way that I like to color things with gradient maps, then it would look really patchy, and the colors just wouldn't look right. The reason for that is because you have to go through this step, which is the solidifying process. So what I use is I grab the background gray as one of my colors, and then I change the background to some highly saturated color. I go normally with a bright red, but feel free to use whatever color best suits your needs. And essentially what this does is it allows you to see through your drawing, seeing all the gray midtones that are missing from your base layer. So here I'm just using that base background gray to create, to paint on a layer that's directly behind my main layer. So with this, I'm just painting out all the patches that seem like they're even slightly redder than they should be. Essentially, you want only the background to be red at this point. So, just zooming in a little bit to make sure I get the detail. Another good thing about doing this solidifying process this way is you can refine some of the edges. A lot of times I'll actually expand some of the edges with the mid-background gray tones, just because it helps keep the edges clean and sharp. So here I'm using the eraser tool. Again, since I haven't merged the original main drawing layer with the gray kind of solidifying layer that's behind it, I can erase out some of the grays if I think that I might have made a mistake or have, went beyond that original drawing layer. So if I make a mistake on the solidifying layer, I can always erase it, and it's not a big deal at this point. Another great thing that this shows you when you have this bright red background is kind of the silhouette of your character. So this is something that sometimes I'll take an eraser tool to, or change up a little bit at this point. Here you can see I merged down the solidifying layer to the main layer, or the main layer to the solidifying layer. So again, this means that all of those mid-tone grays that were originally missing and were actually transparent are now a part of that main drawing layer. And now I'm just cleaning up a few of the edges because I like to do that at this stage. Just try to tidy up a little bit. This is especially useful because the following step is going to be working on the background. And you don't want... Well, I prefer to have a nice silhouette for my character before I start working on the background, just to give me a good idea of what space I have to work with. So here I created a couple more empty layers, and these are going to be the layers that we start drawing the background on. So yeah, nothing too special. So step 5, working on the background. And it kind of like the rough draft. I just kind of start off with getting some ideas. I knew that I wanted this ranger in specific to be in some sort of forest or something like that. So having some sort of trees going on in the background was kind of an obvious way for me to take the picture. Just because, forest, elves. So here you can see I'm just drawing in some ideas for some trees. Not really sure how close or far away they're going to be, but one way that I kind of create backgrounds is I look at the light tones in my picture, and if I want the light tones to be a point of focus, such as the light that's bouncing off of her hood, then I'll add in some darkness right next to it, and that contrast, I think, brings more attention to that area that's right next to her face. If there's a dark patch, such as kind of the bottom of her cloak, that's a little bit darker, and I want to detract from the attention down there, then I'll add in some darker tones. And again, it's just kind of balancing the composition. So high contrast is going to draw the eye, and it's going to make people think that's a lot more of an interesting element in your picture. Or at least that's the way I think of it. I don't know if that has any basis of truth or factuality, but that's what I've found. Here you can see I'm painting in a little bit of texture as I'm shading in. It's not something that I normally do, but since I was kind of speeding through this tutorial, I wanted to keep the background even briefer than I normally spend on the background. And normally I don't spend a lot of time on my backgrounds. For one, because I'm actually not all that great at drawing backgrounds. And for two, because the main point of my pictures is, generally speaking, the characters. So, especially with this background, you're going to notice that I end up just basically blurring most of it, not really paying attention to any details in the background. But something to work on for the future, I'm sure. So at this point in time, I'm probably like, I don't know, maybe 70% done with the picture. And you can tell that I'm still working in black and white. So this is one of the reasons that I call my videos speed drawings opposed to speed paintings. For the most part, I just work in black and white and try to compile a picture with these, light and dark tones. And then the coloring and all the shiny effects I throw on top later, well, that's probably about 10 to 20% of the work. So definitely not a lot. But again, this is just my workflow, so I'm not suggesting anyone does it this way. Yeah, especially backgrounds. I'm sure that everyone does backgrounds better than I do. That being said, I'm kind of liking how this background's coming together. We have a nice forest, a little ravine off to the right, or something like that. It's not anything fancy, but I feel like it's getting the point across. And I think it'll work great for the remainder of this tutorial. So I'm happy with how it's going so far, and I'm sure it's gonna turn out great here as we move towards third and final video in this 3-part tutorial time series. Let's see, here we're gonna speed up the picture and draw the rest of the background. Again, in quite a bit of haste as we finish up here, but that'll conclude the video for today. So feel free to leave any comments or suggestions, like and subscribe, all that great stuff, and we will catch you in the next video.